My dear, darling love, when I was young, the world seemed so simple. It was neat and tidy. There was an order by and a manner in which things were done. The world had a plan. More, God had a plan, and it was black and white, right or wrong. For me, as a cisgendered, heteronormative girl who wanted more than anything to be a mother, a cheerleader, a doctor, a baker, and an actress. I didn't question the order or the way because those things had been decided for me by society and religion. I was a child who knew nothing of the world, its complexities, or the implications of the words moral or ethical. What I knew was Mr. Rodgers' neighborhood, and that neighborhood felt like the only place I could be enough. As a child, I could not make the connection between Mr. Rodgers' assurance that each of us has something that no one else has or ever will have. Something inside that is unique to all time. Considering the innumerable possibilities when adding individual uniqueness plus the multitudes contained within each of us multiplied by the number of people who have ever walked the face of the earth, are currently in existence or will ever exist, the incalculable number of possible identities, positionalities, experiences, and intersectionality is only comparable in number to the amount of absurdity one must accept as truth to believe that humanity could begin to be distilled to a binary, heteronormative world. Of course, I was a child, but it's a great example of believing life is fair and easy simply because I was unaware and blissfully unaffected. Sadly, some people will never grow past this stage of emotional intelligence or diversity of lived experience. I've had the luxury, the privilege of never having felt deep down inside at the core of who I am, that my very being and existence were wrong, a mistake, a sin. You certainly know by now that my love and admiration for Mr. Rodgers continues to this day. When I began living with a young man at the age of 19, I justified it as a slight deviation from the plan that society and religion had for me, a plan which I had so readily accepted and imprinted upon my soul. As young love often does, the feelings waned. We were too young and immature to maintain a healthy long-term relationship, certainly too inexperienced and stupid to be parents. Yet there I was, pregnant. His response when I told him, "Fuck," followed shortly thereafter with, "When my last girlfriend got pregnant." Because of course he'd had nothing to do with it. She just had an abortion. I had wanted to keep the pregnancy, even once insisting that was exactly what I would do. In the end, I complied, and the relentless torture I imposed on myself for almost 25 years nearly cost me my life. Our old friend Mr. Rodgers tells us, forgiveness is a strange thing. It can sometimes be easier to forgive our enemies than our friends. It can be hardest of all to forgive people we love. It bears noting, this is the first and only instance I can think of in which I don't wholeheartedly agree with the patron saint of my neighborhood. I would argue that forgiving ourselves is most difficult of all. While statistics are kept and touted about those undergoing the procedure, I wonder how many men view abortion as a form of birth control, like the young man who saw himself as the solver of two problems, in which the only commonality was him. I digress. But this time in my life would begin to open my mind and heart to the experiences of others. It would help me see that there are no absolutes. My strongly held pro-life stance had been indoctrination that did not account for bodily autonomy, individual rights, circumstance, or science for that matter. I knew my heart was good. I knew I was kind. I knew I was loving. A series of transgressions which I had confessed so many times the priest asked me to stop. Surely a quarter century would meet any Catholic's definition of penance. Those things I knew to be foundational about myself had not changed. I hadn't suddenly become evil or indifferent to what some call human life. With a lot more living under my belt, I now know the biggest difference between a baby and a cluster of cells at that point in pregnancy is rhetorical effect, not the antiquated declaration of religion or society. To the person carrying a pregnancy at that stage, I believe the difference is preparedness. When I first saw you, you were near the same gestational age as the pregnancy I had ended. Were either of you any more a child or any less a multiplying of cells? No. Even as I write this, I refer to the cluster that became you over the course of 10 months as you. When I saw those first images of you, I remember asking the ultrasound tech, is that the baby? This showed me that not only does experience from person to person create an incomprehensible amount of perspectives and possibilities, experiences within our own lives as we grow, learn, and mature change who we are, how we think, and if we're smart, how we view the world and the people we share it with. Back to Mr. Rodgers. He once said, "When we choose to be parents, we accept another human being as part of ourselves, and a large part of our emotional selves will stay with that person as long as we live. From that time on, there will be another person on this earth whose orbit around us will affect us as surely as the moon affects the tides, and affect us in some ways more deeply than anyone else can. Our children are extensions of ourselves." That Mr. Rodgers. We're back on track. Everyone knows he had me at Hello Neighbor. When you were born, I don't think I even had a passing knowledge of non-binary or transgender. I had not yet been affected by or met anyone struggling with the unimaginable suffering of being assigned a gender at birth that went against everything they knew to be true about themselves with every fiber of their being. I knew nothing of the life and death battle faced by so many because of the abject cruelty of the societal and religious adherence to binary rigidity. What I did know was my body, my choice, and without it ever occurring to me to allow you to make your own choice about circumcision, I left it to your dad. At least he had the same parts, which was something I had come to loathe about the men who are so often the most vocal and vitriolic when passing laws on the bodies of biologically female people. Of course, this is rooted in the patriarchy, which sprouts from the binary. Infuriating. But another discussion. For now. As you grew, I did too. You weren't just an extension of me. I relished seeing the world fresh through your eyes, from your perspective. What I did know was that I didn't want to shame you about the things that interested and delighted you. I didn't know it at the time, but these are the underpinnings of who we are, how we express ourselves, and the safety of being our truest selves. I remember the first time you could articulate that you wanted to look at toys in the girls section. Now a mother, my primary identity once was a daughter to a mother who I could never be good enough to please. I knew I didn't want you to feel the same shame, judgment, or discouragement I felt as my fragile self-worth formed. Despite my best intentions, I had not seen this kind of parenting modeled for me. I had no plan. I froze. That day, we just walked down the aisle. But I knew this would be the first of many trips we would take past the toy section. So I decided to break it down by items. The boys section became the car aisle, the Lego aisle. The girls section became the doll aisle, the plushie aisle. What was born of wanting you to feel safe, seen, and accepted in yourself when toy shopping, as I look back, it was a very small step toward rejecting the binary. There were no boys' toys or girls' toys. There were only toys. While rudimentary and based in love for you, I was unknowingly building a foundation of understanding that the binary was not adequate for the whole and valuable person I wanted you to know yourself to be. As we traveled a bit more, your best friend in kindergarten had 2 moms. While I know it sounds insane now, I had never knowingly interacted with a gay woman before, much less a gay couple, much less, not just casually, but as friends. Would one or both of them think I was attracted to them? Would one or both of them be attracted to me? What do lesbians talk about? What interests them? I was a mess of well-intended ignorance, and I learned, just as I'm not attracted to every man, it was just as ridiculous to think they were attracted to every woman. The mind-blowing insanity continued when I realized that lesbians talk about the same things other humans talk about: pop culture, hobbies, parenting, the frenzied irritation of dressing kids for School Spirit Week. You didn't think I'd forgotten about Mr. Rodgers, did you? He once said, "There are 3 ways to ultimate success. The first way is to be kind. The second way is to be kind. The third way is to be kind." They were kind to me, understanding, as Bear Bergman says, mistakes will be made. They saw me actively wanting to learn, to grow, to be kind. This allowed them to not only forgive my mistakes by extending a great deal of grace, but offer the gift of their friendship. When you asked how Evan had scored a mom and a mama, I gave you the most enlightened explanation I could give while my experience in social grace software were still updating. I explained that some families have a mom and a dad. Some, as ours had recently become, have just a mom. Some have 2 moms, some have 2 dads. Some kids are raised by their grandparents, and not one of those family dynamics was better than another. Where there is love, there is family. You asked me, what if you'd told me you liked boys instead of girls? Frozen. It was the toy aisle all over again had I learned nothing. Planless, and my enlightenment update still loading, I winged it. I told you to never be afraid to tell me who you love. I told you that I would never not love you. I explained that when you were born, I imagined a life for you. I dreamed you would marry a lovely, motherless young woman so I wouldn't have to share you. That you would have a family and bring my grandchildren to visit me. I said, if it takes me a minute to wrap my mind around, it's only because of the dream I had for you, and that is a me problem, not a you problem. My problem is for me to reconcile, not for you to adhere to. Of course, the premature mourning of my imagined grandchildren because you may one day love a man was completely ridiculous, because in retrospect, the entire conversation was happening because Evan had a mom and a mama. I now know if you were to love a man, whether you have children or not, is a decision you, and I want to emphasize this because so many fought for it, get to make together. No matter your journey, the fact remains, where there is love, there is family. It was rocky, but we had made it through our first chat on an issue central to self as you began to understand yourself. Apparently, I was drunk with the rush of success when I asked, "Do you like a boy in your class?" Unaffected, you yelled back to me as you ran off to play with the toys. I'm sure I had an internal meltdown to destigmatize for you. No, just asking. A few years down the road, and my system upgrade freshly installed by our dear friends, I picked you up from after-school care and met the delight of a human we would come to know as Heidi. They were a teaching student at MSU, so it made perfect sense that their part-time job would be working for the city caring for children. The small group of students who worked at the after-school care program adopted me as kind of a surrogate mother of sorts, since many of them were far from home and the support of their own mothers. One afternoon, Heidi confided in me that they were hurt the school would not allow them to use the honorific Mix instead of Miss. The school thought it would confuse the kids. My mind instantly recalled the many times I had declared, "Good morning, ladies," when walking in to drop you off. Heidi was such a kind and caring person. I was wrecked by the thought of having hurt their feelings. Slightly more confident in recognizing an opportunity to learn when not knowing and allowing kindness to guide me, I said, "Heidi, that's horrible. I think it's adults that have a much harder time understanding than kids. This is a perfect time for them because they're learning and growing so quickly. I'm shocked the school wouldn't want you to use Mix. It's disrespectful to you and a disservice to the kids." It turns out I'm a lot lighter on my feet when I don't feel responsible for molding an entire human. I did take the opportunity to apologize for yelling, "Good morning, ladies," every morning. What I now see as an attempt to make me comfortable with their existence, Heidi said, "It's no big deal. I'm not offended. I know you didn't mean anything by it." My brain screamed, "No way, Mix, not on my watch." What my mouth said was, "It is a big deal. The school's decision impacted you enough that you wanted to talk to me about it. It doesn't become no big deal because it's me. Can I ask you some questions so I can be sure I'm honoring who you are?" My goodness. Heidi looked amazed and seen. Now I understand what I saw on Heidi's face was likely relief in feeling safe and accepted in the space I held for them. Eagerly inviting my questions, their career of changing lives through education began. I asked, "When I come in the morning, I greet the group because I'm usually late and I don't have the ability to greet everyone individually, but I also don't want to say, 'Good morning, ladies,' and Heidi. Is there a better way for me to do that?" They explained, "You could say, 'Good morning, friends,' or 'Good morning, beautiful people.'" Of course, it all seemed so obvious. Heidi also has the distinction of introducing me to they-them pronouns. They-them felt awkward, but I've integrated their use into my lexicon. Back to Bear Bergman's wisdom on being human. Being kind to another human being is so much more important than disagreeing with any long-standing and widely recognized grammar rule that we neglect to remember is long-standing because it feels new. Their rule of thumb for me was err on the side of someone's name if you are unsure of their pronouns. Heidi graduated from MSU, and when they posted a picture of themselves standing in front of their very own classroom on the first day of school, my eyes instantly saw the name on the door. Mix was the honorific. I remember screaming in celebration of Heidi's triumph to be themselves, which is so incredibly ridiculous when you think about their need to triumph, to have their identity acknowledged. My love, you are such an incredibly deep thinker with an astounding capacity for empathy. When you turned 8 years old, I wrote a short piece on who you were at that age. And even though I lived that time with you, I still find it a little unbelievable. You were so secure in who you were that it radiated from you. I wrote, I fear you will be like your mother. Regardless of my guidance, you will carry the weight of others' burdens. Your heart will ache when it's not understood. It will shatter when its abundant love is not returned. You will champion hopeless causes and blame yourself when they don't succeed. I fear, like me, you will live in a constant state of penitence. In that piece, I went on to mention your refusal to eat chocolate that wasn't fair trade after learning of child labor abuses in the Ivory Coast. Our dear Mr. Rodgers reminds us that the greatest gift you ever give is your honest self. To both my awe and sometimes dismay, you've never given anything less. Often the baseless argument is made that kids are too young to know who they are, and certainly not if they're transgender or non-binary, which boggles the mind when you think about it, because we never question a cisgender child's acceptance of their assigned sex. Again, the fucking theocratic patriarchy born of the binary, yada yada. Ugh. The damage caused by theft of bodily autonomy and knowledge of self because of our discomfort and their powerlessness to change our theft is incomprehensible. As adults, we like to think we know answers to topics we deem weighty and too confusing to children. What your solid knowledge of self taught me is that kids can grasp weighty concepts because child labor is not confusing. Inherent knowledge of self is inherent. The weight of many topics exists because adults placed it there. More and more, I believe that society brands things too much for children to understand because we are unwilling to do the work or face the discomfort of growing. More often than not, I believe it's the refusal to have the foundational conversations necessary to teach and in many instances learn from each other, even the untarnished perspective of a child. It strikes me how society has changed just in the last 30 years of my life. It was whispered that my high school locker partner was gay. She was silly, irreverent. She didn't fit the stereotype of a nice young lady, but then neither did I. Rumors spread that she wanted to take a girl from another school to prom. She was denied a ticket, and nothing more was said about it. She came out in adulthood. Maybe she felt safe from the torment of high school jackals. Maybe the world had changed enough. Or maybe she just had enough. When she began posting photos of her wife and children and grandchildren, I saw a life and family full of love. I thought of the teenager. Under all of her irreverence, even though I didn't know what to call it at the time, I now know she had a tender soul, an unusual kindness, sweetness about her. I ached at the thought of that girl who must have hurt herself by pretending, and those who hurt her because she hadn't sacrificed enough of her identity to completely fool them. As the world around us changes, so too must our understanding of it. My dream for you has changed, and I didn't even realize it. Now I simply hope you find happiness in the journey of life. If you can do that, you'll be richer than most. I have no doubt you will win honors and prizes, but I hope you never forget, as Mr. Rodgers said, it is not the honors and the prizes and the fancy outsides of life that ultimately nourish our souls. It is the knowing that we can be trusted, that we never have to fear the truth, that the bedrock of our being is firm. I hope you never stop nourishing your soul with the same astonishing fervor I have seen in the first 15 years of your life. We've discussed many times that ignorance is born of blind acceptance of norms and rejection of anything contrary to them. Hate is born of fear that is rooted in a refusal to learn, understand, and accept anyone or anything outside the lines of what blind adherence dictates. Those people, so unsure of the bedrock of their being that they weave political ideology and religious zealotry into an identity they assume and ferociously defend, they are missing what makes the experience of life so rich. I hope you never become so arrogant in your intellect that you lose your curiosity. Asking questions is not a weakness. It takes a great deal of confidence in what you do know to admit and ask questions about things you don't. As the world continues to change at a staggering pace, we can't begin to comprehend the number of things we will not comprehend. And that, my love, is breathtakingly exciting.